I have to be completely honest with myself. Some of these books may never get read. Some of them may just remain on my shelf for all eternity, and that's okay. But I'm going to keep them there until I read them. Okay, so I'm just going to go start talking about the books I want to read. And it makes me feel good to talk about books and stuff I want to read. So, I'm just going to do that. Okay. So I have a whole stack of plays here that I want to get through that I pulled from my classroom. And I want to read them because I want to see if they're viable for scenes, for potential productions in the future for my theater classroom. The first one, as you can see from the top, is Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. This has been on my shelf for quite some time. I think I've brought this with me from when I started teaching high school. It's a really old copy, as you can tell, but it's a really important play, and I feel like it would be a great play to read or study with a class. I don't know if it's middle school appropriate, though. That's the only thing. So that's my goal, is to read this and to figure out if it's middle school appropriate. This is the screenplay, so it's based on the movie. So potentially I could watch the movie and follow along with this. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, next up. This is an old set of plays that I found. I cannot remember where I found this old set of plays. I can't remember if this was in my classroom or if it was in my new classroom. I don't know. I don't know where I found it. But it has a play back here by Ray Bradbury called The Other Foot. And I am a huge Ray Bradbury fan. So I feel like that alone is enough to pull me in. And I've never heard of any of these little plays before, but I think they would be good for little scenes. We'll see. Again, I have to read it just to double check to make sure it's appropriate for middle school and appropriate for my students. It's just a set of little plays with the title Teacher, which is the one of the plays in the collection. And I don't recognize any of the other playwrights on the back of this book. But we'll see. It's an old little set of plays. We'll see what happens. The other play that I'm so excited about reading is The Outsiders play, which is based on S.E. Hinton's novel, The Outsiders, which I've done a video about in the past, which we've read in the past, which I love. The Outsiders is such a great book. And this is the stage play version, adapted by Christopher Segal. But I'm super excited to read the adaptation and potentially use this as a production in one of my classes or at my school. I think it would be so cool to do, especially since we do have students who read this book in their English class. I think it would be just so cool to do. I love it, and I really want to read this and see what it's like, see if it's able to be used in the middle school classroom. So, okay, a couple more of these are famous plays, and a couple more of these are plays I've literally never heard of before. Okay, so the first is we have a whole class set of Steel Magnolias. I did see some of our students doing scenes from this play last year, so I'm gonna read it again because I know I've seen the movie a long time ago. I can't remember the whole plot or what happens in it, but I do want to read it just to check it out. And maybe there were some scenes I can pull out that would be interesting to do as a part of the class. We do have class sets of all of these plays that I'm showing you, so it would be really easy and simple to do a production with a class because I have all of the copies of the scripts for all the students, so it would be really easy to do. All right, next is one that I was supposed to read over the summer and I never got the opportunity to. It's been on my shelf for so long. This is one of the plays I do not have a class set for, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. And I started to read it over the summer, and it didn't seem like it was something that I could do with my classes or even talk about with my classes. It's very much a adult play, but I still want to read it. I still want to give some attention to it just to look at it. This is one that I don't know if I would necessarily consider as a part of the curriculum for theater, my theater classes in particular, but I do want to at least know the play and read it and know what it's about. Okay, the next one that I do have a class set for is The Diary of Anne Frank. It is obviously about Anne Frank. It's about the Holocaust, so which the 8th graders at our school do learn about, which I think would be an interesting theater class experience. We do have plenty of copies of this play. We could do it. I want to read it and know just for sure. I remember seeing it when I was in high school. I remember seeing a production of this play when I was in high school at one of the local theaters. And it was really, there was a lot of heavy stuff in it. It's about the Holocaust, so it's going to be kind of heavy. But it's also really important to learn about as well. So, yeah, this is a play I definitely want to try to read to get a sense of what we could do and talk about with this particular play. The rest of the plays that I have here are all pretty short, but none of them I have ever heard of before. They are all, like, it seems like individually published, locally even written plays that are pretty short that seem to work for middle school. At least or seem to be focused for middle school. The first, which I'm kind of excited about, is Titanic, which would be so cool to read about. I think it would be good for middle school. I haven't read it, so I don't quite know, but I think it would be good for middle school. It's historical. I have a lot of interest in the Titanic. It was a pretty interesting time period. It was a pretty interesting story. Maybe if this is based on the original, like the true events of the Titanic, I think that would be okay. If it's not based on the movie, it would be okay, right? So yeah, this one's a really short one, and it's about historical events, so it could potentially, relate to stuff that they've learned at school. The next one is called Cybermare. This is one I have not heard of, and it looks like it's about something to do with being online and possibly, like online bullying, cyberbullying, which is also a really important topic to talk about with middle schoolers. We'll see. I'm going to give it a try. It looks like a really, really short play. I don't know how big. The cast doesn't look very big, but it does. The great thing about these plays is it does give you a cast, and it tells you how many lines each character has. So it gives an opportunity to students who don't necessarily want to read or memorize that many lines to still be a part of a production. The next one is definitely made for middle school. It's called Much Ado About Middle School. Again, never heard of it, but it looks like it is published by some of the same people who have published the other plays that I'm finding on my shelf. And it looks like it's a retelling of Much Ado About Nothing, about Shakespeare's play, Much Ado About Nothing, but it's set in middle school, which would be kind of interesting, I feel like. I feel like it would be kind of interesting. Like I said, I want to read it just to make sure I have a better understanding of what's going on. But it looks kind of cool. The cast doesn't look too big, but it does give you a sense of like who everyone's supposed to be. And I think it would be fun. Loosely based on Much Ado About Nothing and A Midsummer's Night Dream. So it's like a crossover. Pretty cool. All right, the next one that's on my shelf is called American Idol, Murdering the Music, which idol is spelled like the other kind of idol, not like the pop idol, but like being idol, like how I want to be right now. This does say that it has mature themes, so I am going to need to read this before I give it to my students, but it does, I don't know if it's a murder mystery, so I definitely want to check it out. I think it's supposed to be like a parody of American Idol. The idea behind American Idol, I don't know. It's a short one, another really short play. Similar publishers, the same publisher as the last book. So we'll have to see. Last two. One is called Silly Heart, which is a one-act play. And it says it's a tragedy meets fantasy, myth meets reality. So it's a more serious play, even though it's called Silly Heart. Again, never heard of it. I have a whole class set of it. I should read it just to know what's going on. It seems like there's some kind of like fairy tale-esque thing happening here, but it is supposed to be a drama. It's supposed to be like a serious play. Something serious or sad is happening. But seems like it could be interesting. And then last is called The Humor Games, which I assume is a parody of The Hunger Games. And I think this one is also supposed to be like a comedy. If it's a parody, usually it's a comedy. And the girl's name is Catskills Wintergreen instead of the character from The Hunger Games. But this says it's a slapstick parody of The Hunger Games. So I don't know exactly what I should expect. I'm keeping the bar low, but it looks like it could be interesting. It looks like it's loosely based off of The Hunger Games. It seems like it has like a lot of the same like character tropes and stuff like that, but it's supposed to be funny, I guess. It's enough to kind of get me through a winter break. Hopefully able to be read while raising a infant, maybe. Like I said, I would love to read these. Not entirely sure if it's going to happen. You know, you never know what could happen. You never know how plans come together. So let's talk about the books that I really want to read that have been on my shelf for so long, but I don't know if I'll ever read another book in 2023. I'm currently reading a couple of library books that I got. I've already met my goal for the year, so I feel kind of confident in that. I've already met my reading goal for the year, so it's not like I'm really trying to like beat myself up if I don't hit my reading goal, because I've made it already. But you know, I want to read as much as I can, especially if I'm going to be not able to be reading when I'm doing my new role, you know? So, let's just talk about the books that are on my shelf that I have hope for, but it's okay if it doesn't happen. The first one has been on my shelf since I taught the short story from it called The Ravine. This is Ray Bradbury's Dandelion Wine, and it's about this town that kind of has all these like really weird, spooky things happen to them. There's a short story that comes from this book that is called The Ravine. It's like about a serial killer. And every time I've taught the story has kind of this ambiguous ending. You don't really know what happens at the end. But if you read the book, you kind of find out what happens. I want to read the whole book. I've read like obviously the next chapter after the story, so I do know what happens in that particular story, but I'd kind of like to read the whole book just to see what the whole town is about and how the rest of the stories kind of connect. The next is, I bought this so long ago. I can't remember when I bought it. I think I bought it right when it came out, like last year. It's called The Initial Insult by Mindy McGinnis. I really loved her other book called The Female of the Species. Whew, I loved it. It was like so raw, so real. I loved the characters in that book. And so when I saw that she had a new book, The Initial Insult, I was like, I'm picking this up. It's been on my shelf for quite some time though. It's kind of a Halloween book, and Halloween is over. Maybe I'll get to it next Halloween if I don't get to it before the end of 2023, but I really do want to read this. I really enjoy her writing. It's been on my shelf for too long. I need to read it. Next, I think I talked about this book in my summer reading plans, and I still didn't get to it, and that is They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. I really, really want to read this book. I really do. It sounds so cool. I love the premise of it. I think that any book that's not afraid to talk about death or about like, you know, dying, I think is so important, especially for young adults, because it is something that literally every person has to deal with in their lifetime. So yeah, it's still on my shelf. I still want to read it. Hopefully I can get to it before the end of the year. This next one is a manga that was recommended to me by my friend Miss Golden, and it's called Land of the Lustrous. And I'm not a big manga reader, but she's recommended quite a few good mangas to me. She's an actual huge manga reader. I asked her for recommendations. This is something she recommended. I think it's like the characters in it are like They're like based on crystals, I think, which I feel like is kind of my vibe. So yeah, I'm gonna check out The Land of Lustrous. This is the first volume. I bought this at her recommendation, so I'm gonna give it a shot. I feel like it would be a little bit easier to read than like a regular novel because it's got, pictures and stuff. So I'm hoping that I can get through it pretty quickly before the end of the year and give Miss Golden my thoughts. Next up is two by my new favorite author, Neal Shusterman. The first is Everlost by Neal Shusterman. This is his more fantasy work. I've read quite a few of his like realism, sci-fi works, and this is one that's more supposed to be fantasy. And this one I think is supposed to be like younger kids than in the other books that I've read. Most of his books that I've read are like about high schoolers or young adults. And this one I think is supposed to be younger, I think. This is another series of his that I haven't gotten into, but we'll add it to the list. So I'm hoping to get to this before the end of the year so I can just have like my whole Neal Shusterman track like nearing its completion. All right, the other Neal Shusterman that I have is one of his new ones. It just came out. Oh, I thought it just came out. No, but it's 2021. It's called Roxy. I think this is another one where it's like kind of sci-fi, kind of realism, similar to like Unwind, where it's tackling some of these really big issues, but it's like drugs, right? It's the topic of drugs, especially of like young people getting involved in drugs and what it does to them and that kind of stuff. It looks super fascinating. I haven't heard a lot of buzz about it. I mean, honestly, it is really hard to beat a book like Scythe and the Arc of a Scythe series. For me, for pretty much everyone I've talked to about Neal Shusterman's books, Scythe is like the pinnacle of his work. But I just want to see what his other stuff is. I really enjoyed Game Changer. I really enjoyed Unwind. So I want to see like his other stuff, and I think I'll enjoy them too. Roxy's been on my shelf since I bought it. I think I bought it this year. It's a new one on my shelf. But I'm interested to see kind of how he tackles this topic of like drugs with kids. Because again, this is a really important topic to talk about in our current society. I've got three more. Pretty ambitious, I know, but three more I think I can do. The next one is not a YA. So I'm going to talk about it. It's not a YA. I definitely could not recommend it to any of my students, even though it is based on a musical, and that is Wicked by Gregory Maguire. I started to read Wicked back in high school when the musical came out, and I loved the musical. I was obsessed with the music. I know all of the words. Anytime it starts playing, I'm singing along. I love the musical. It's probably one of my favorite musicals. The book is absolutely nothing like it, though. I started to read it in high school and I dropped it because I got weirded out by it, to be honest. And even like reading a couple of the pages as an adult, Gregory Maguire's writing is really different. It's not what I'm used to reading. So I think that was initially the reason why I dropped it, because it was just kind of like this writing style that I was not into. But I think now that I'm an adult and I have gotten a couple of different writing styles under my belt, I feel like I could tackle this one. Plus, I do want to really compare it to the musical, because the musical is so different and has this much more, I don't know how to say this, if this is right to say, but like Disney-esque vibe. I feel like I could compare this to the musical and have a lot of thoughts. So it's a thick one. I want to read this. It's on my shelf. I've got the audiobook queued up. This could be the one that I actually do try for. The last two are just kind of hopefuls. A student told me I had to read this last year and I never did, and I feel so bad. But it's Shadow and Bone, and obviously there's a next Netflix series about it. I haven't seen it because I want to read the book. So it's a fantasy. I've heard good things about it. It's kind of old by now, though. I mean, like, I feel like the hype for this series has kind of gone away. The series has finished, I'm pretty sure. which I prefer. If you're the type of person who likes to read a series with the books as they come out, I feel bad for you. I'm sorry. George R.R. Martin, Diana Gabaldon, so many authors have kind of like given me some really tough times when I'm waiting for their next book to come out. I have a couple of series right now that I'm like, why is it not over? Why can't I read the last book? And it's hard on me. So I tend to wait until the whole series is out before I start reading the series, just so I know that I can finish it and have like this complete narrative in my head. So this is one that I do really want to read. It's a hopeful. I hope to get to it. I've got the audiobook, so it could potentially happen. And then the last one has been on my shelf for probably 5 years. Probably even longer. Probably even 10 years. And it's called Brave Story. And it is the coolest book that I have. Not the coolest book, that's not true. One of the coolest books on my shelf that I haven't read. And it's by Miyuki Miyabi. And it's a fantasy, as you can kind of tell. There's like all these fantasy creatures on the cover and on the back. And it looks like this absolutely epic story about this kid going on a crazy adventure. And it looks so cool to me, and I cannot get it off my shelf. I cannot get rid of it. I have to keep it. It's literally the thing that I like look at every night, and I'm like, man, I wish I could read this book. It's so thick, but I want to read this. Like, I really, really want to read this book. I don't want to get rid of it without having read it. So, it's on my shelf, and maybe it could happen. That's kind of how I feel about this book. It could happen, maybe. I'd have to really find a good audiobook of it, but it's going to be there. It's going to be on my shelf. It's going to be on my nightstand until I can complete it. There are several other books on the shelves behind me that you cannot see that I want to read. Some books that I didn't get to this summer that were on my summer plan. But as you know, I'm trying really hard to just try to get through the books that I really want to prioritize, that I really want to read, the plays that I really want to read too for school. So I'm going to try and focus on them. Again, fully aware that none of this could ever happen. This could just be me planning into the void and just... But I really do want to read some of these books. Some of them I'm really excited about. Some of them I've been thinking about for so long. Like, I look at them and I'm like, I want to read that book so bad. That's my plan for winter break. That's my plan for enjoying my time off. And maybe in the early morning hours when I'm taking care of another human life, I will find the time and energy to put my eyes on a page and read a book that I really want to read. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful winter break and time off and holiday vacation. And I look forward to sharing my reading life, or lack thereof, with you in the future. Have a great day. I'll see you in class. Bye.